Okay, so we are now in chapter 3, course in principles of patronage refund and interest on share capital. In this chapter 3, we will learn about the allocation and the distribution in and of patronage refund in the context of cooperatives in the Philippines. So the allocation and distribution comprises different topics. Number one is statutory reserve allocation. Letter B is the interest on share capital. Letter one is patronage refund allocation. Three, but there are a lot of things to be discussed under this chapter. Okay, so let's move on to the first one under the allocation, chapter 3, allocation and distribution. Letter A is statutory reserves allocation. So in the statutory reserves allocation, this refers to a portion of the net surplus that cooperatives are required to allocate for specific purposes. It is to be emphasized that statutory reserve is a requirement for allocation. These reserves are mandated by the cooperative law and regulations to ensure the financial stability, the compliance, and long-term sustainability of the cooperative. Okay, so for purpose and allocation, the net surplus of cooperative is distributed. First, the reserve fund. The reserve fund should be at least 10% of the net surplus. So at least 10% for the reserve fund. The education and training fund should be at most 10%, not more than 10%. So general reserve fund at least, education and training fund at most 10%. So that's all in all, that's 20%. The reserve fund or this fund allocation serves several purposes. For the reserve fund, it will serve as the stability. It contributes to the cooperative stability and helps cover net losses in operation. Is also for the legal compliance. The General Assembly may decrease the amount allocated to the reserve fund if it already exceeds the share capital. Another one is the investment restrictions. The reserve fund cannot be used for investments beyond those allowed by cooperative laws. And for dissolution, upon dissolution, the reserve fund is not distributed among members. Instead, it may be used for community benefit or entrusted to a federation or union affiliated with the cooperative. And then for the training and educational fund, for purposes for which these are located, is half of this amount can be spent by the cooperative for education and training and other training purposes. So 5% is for the local na pwedeng gamitin ng kooperatiba, yung may be used by the cooperative for education and training purposes. And the other 10% is credited to education and training fund of the cooperative's apex organization, such as the federation or union. Kung saan bilong yung cooperative, doon nila i-remit yung other 5%. So upon dissolution, any unexpected balance of this fund goes to the apex organization's cooperative education and training fund. So in summary, the statutory reserve plays a vital role in maintaining financial health and legal compliance and members' welfare within cooperatives. So explanation of the statutory fund based on the equity principle. So the statutory reserves are a pool of funds that cooperative organizations are required by law to hold. So these reserves serve as a guarantor of liquidity, and it will ensure that the cooperative remains solvent and financially stable. The regulatory authority granted to states such as dito sa atin sa Pilipinas imposes measures for licensure and reserve requirements for cooperative entities. The equity principle and statutory reserves. So the equity principle aligns with the cooperative ethos of fairness and member ownership. Here's how the equity or the statutory reserve fit into this principle. It will serve as protection for the members. It will serve as the equitable treatment, the legal compliance, and balance with share capital, and also avoiding insolvency kasi nakatulong din ito for liquidity stability. The methods of evaluation is rule-based approach and principle-based approach. This rule-based approach is the approach that follows specific rules set by regulatory bodies. It ensures consistency and compliance. In the principle-based approach, here the cooperative considers the equity principle and its unique circumstances. It allows for flexibility while maintaining fairness. So in summary, the statutory reserves plays a vital role in safeguarding cooperative members' interests, promoting financial stability, and upholding the cooperative spirit. The second one is deducting statutory reserves from net surplus. So why? And what is that deduction from the statutory reserve from the net surplus? So statutory reserves are option of the net surplus that cooperatives are required by law to allocate for specific purposes. Now these reserves serve as financial buffer that will ensure the cooperative magiging stable, compliant, and the ability to meet future obligations. So that is the foundations of the statutory reserves. For calculation and deduction, so we compute the net surplus and identify the statutory reserves. So those are the important things. So ensuring the compliance with legal requirements. So it will ensure the organization or the cooperatives compliance with the legal requirements. So the cooperatives should be well versed in the legal framework that governs their operation. In the case of patronage refund and statutory reserves, and understanding cooperative laws and regulation is very crucial. The regular review and keeping up to date on any changes or amendments to these laws on the patronage refund, net surplus, and interest on share capital, as well as the statutory funds. So that's for the another compliance for this is to create and for the documents, policies, and procedures to create clear and comprehensive policies related to statutory reserves, patronage refunds, and other financial matters. So the documents, procedures for calculating the surplus, allocating reserves, and distributing refunds, and ensure that all relevant staff are aware of these policies and follow them consistently. So yung documentation dito is very important, and for the policies and procedures na i-follow ng lahat, including and not limited to the distribution, the actual distribution of the net surplus. If the cooperative will distribute during the General Assembly on site, or if they're going to distribute in the office after the General Assembly, because they will have a limited time distributing the net surplus or whatever the dividend during and after the General Assembly is conducted. So for the another compliance with legal requirements is the internal audit reviews. So the conduct of the regular internal audits to assess the compliance of the computation of the patronage refund. So there will also be a review of the financial records, the reserve allocation, and refund processes. Also, identify the discrepancies or areas for improvement based on the evaluation of the internal auditors. Another one for the compliance is the transparency and reporting. So the cooperatives should be transparent with their members regarding the financial matters, and to provide annual reports that detail the allocation of net surplus, statutory reserves, and patronage refund. Another one is to be able to communicate openly about the cooperative's financial health and decisions related to the surplus distribution. So Another one area for compliance is the professional advice. So we seek legal and financial advice from professionals or consult with accountants, cooperative experts, and legal advisors to ensure that there is compliance with the distribution of the patronage refund and interest on share capital, as well as the computation of the statutory reserves. And also in order to address any legal questions or uncertainties promptly. Another compliance here is the members' education, because we need to educate cooperative members, including their rights, responsibilities, and the cooperative's financial processes. We conduct workshops or information sessions on topics like patronage refunds and equity principles. Remember that compliance is not a one-time effort. It requires ongoing diligence and commitment. By adhering to legal requirements, cooperatives protect their members' interests and maintain trust within the cooperative community. So that's for the first, the letter A of the chapter 3, which is about the statutory reserves allocation. So we are in chapter 3, and it is the chapter title is the Allocation and Distribution. So thank you very much, and see you in the next lesson in chapter 3.